All right, well, welcome to the end of week 3 of fall semester 2025. What a week it has been. Not just with cool stuff learning from school, but man, with the whole mess down at UVU has been just crazy to hear what happened there. It's really sad that young man took Charlie Kirk's life. Yeah, there's just no reason for that. And that's part of the reason why I want to teach and encourage more people to learn as I am learning, going through my education and doing things to help you learn too, is the in order to truly learn, you need to understand different opinions. You need to have that opposite and equal reaction to get motion. You need to have that contrast. And tension between opinions is where learning can really happen. So it's so important for us to make sure that we are doing our part in discouraging violence. Let's not encourage that kind of stuff. It's really bad, so we want to be careful with that. So having a difference of opinion is not a bad thing. So just it's just sad. Anyways, what happened with that? In fact, to begin today, I want to talk about my Islam class. One of the things we talked about some of the basic ideas and concepts of Islam. I'm going to talk about those here in just a minute, but I wanted to share a little bit of the final sermon that the Prophet Muhammad gave before he passed away. So there's a sermon that he did. This is in 623 AD. So this is I can't remember what other than the year, what like month and day it was, but anyways, he pulled the people together that were in the area of Mecca, that part of the world, Saudi Arabia, and he gave them a final sermon. He says here, "O people, lend me an attentive ear, for I know not whether after this year I shall ever be amongst you again. Therefore listen carefully to what I am saying, and take these words to those who could not be present here today. O people, just as you regard this month, this day, this city as sacred, so regard the life and property of every Muslim a sacred trust. Return the goods entrusted to you to their rightful owners. Hurt no one, so that no one may hurt you. Remember that you will indeed meet your Lord, and that he will indeed reckon your deeds." He went on to say a bunch more. That was just the first, basically 2 paragraphs of what his final speech was. And it was really good speech, really good talk that he gave. But it's so interesting to look at Islam, because a lot of people today see Islam as a very violent and deadly religion. We have to understand that's not how it necessarily started. There was a lot of violence against Islam at the very beginning. A lot of the non-Islamic Arabic tribes saw Islam as a threat, and they did what they always do, and they tried to conquer the threats, get rid of them, basically. So understand that in today's world, we look at the extremists, which is a definite minority of Muslims. And we just kind of generalize that's the way that they all are, and that's not the case. So we want to be very careful with how we look at other religions and other things, especially when they have a long history, because we need to make sure that we're taking the time to understand where did they come from, what's going on with them, so that we can understand them better. So I just thought it'd be interesting, especially in light of this week, to just let you know what were some of the things that was the last words of the Prophet Muhammad to his followers of Islam, basically. And they were basically treat each other as equals, help each other out, be kind to each other, be nice to each other. Don't be jerks to people, don't kill them. So that was just interesting. Now to get into a little bit more about Islam and some of their basic beliefs. In Islam, there's what are called the 5 pillars of Islam. These are 5 very important things to be done in order to enjoy the blessings of Allah. And Allah is just God. That's all. It's just the Arabic for God, basically. Allah isn't necessarily a name of God. It's just the word God in Arabic, basically. So the 5 pillars, these are the things that a good Muslim is going to do on a regular basis. The first pillar is known as Shahada, and that is the prayers, or not the prayers. This is the act of bearing witness. So when you become Muslim, there is a phrase, a statement that you make that proclaims Allah as God, and that there is no other God but Allah, and those kinds of things. It's a statement of faith or belief in Islamic ideas. So that's one of the pillars that you need to do when you first join it. This phrase is also, if I remember right, mentioned whenever a child is born to a Muslim family. The father whispers this phrase to the ear of the child to just start to get them thinking about Allah and those things as a newly born baby, basically, which is an interesting tradition they have. The second pillar is salat, which is the prayers. Those are the prayers that Muslims do. They do 5 prayers a day, if I remember right. 5 prayers a day. They face Mecca, which is over in Saudi Arabia, and then they pray. And these prayers are actually really cool. If you've never observed these prayers, they're really fascinating. If you just walk in and like see them or watch a video of them, you might not think much about these prayers. Just because you see them sitting up, and then they go down and put their forehead on the ground, and then they come back up and they're praying. And sometimes they seem to do this over and over. Well, they repeat these prayers a couple of times whenever they pray. Sometimes it's 2 or 3, sometimes it's 4 or 5 times. I'm trying to remember where one of the readings we had went into great detail on the prayer. Oh, there is whenever they pray, when you see them, they start standing, they go to kneeling, they go down to putting their forehead on the ground, it looks like, and then they come back up, and then they go back down, and sometimes they stand back up and then come back down. It seems just strange, like, what are you doing? Like, this just seems so weird, but there's actually a pattern to this of what they're doing. And it was really fascinating to read this. I don't know if I can go, we don't have the time necessarily to go into it. But the point is it's just as if if you walk in and approach a king, you make yourself known, and then you're going to bow down to the king, and then you're going to sit up and listen to the king and have this conversation with a king. And so the prayers are based on you approaching God and being at God's feet. And so you come in, you announce yourself, then you go down, and then you bow down in front of him, and then you sit up to receive instructions and things. And there's phrases that they say as they do this. It's really fascinating to think of. There is something behind every step of the process. There is meaning to how those prayers work out, which is really, really cool. Really cool thing to look at. So the third pillar of Islam is known as zakah. This is the purification. This is, it's kind of an interesting idea of, putting it together. I'm trying to remember. Let me see. Zakat it's called purification, but it's basically donation. It's giving of yourself, it's tithing. Basically, it's what it is. It's tithing. Muslims are to pay a tithing of their annual wealth to the mosque that goes to God, and they use it to support families and education for Muslims and other things like that. So they use this again to help other people. So there is a tithing that they pay. I'm trying to remember what the number was of it. Let's see. The official level of this tithe, which is set at 1/40th or 2.5% of the value of all liquid assets and income generating properties in the worshipper's possession. So this is based on a hadith text and was confirmed by Muslim scholars. So that's what they do. So 2.5% of all of your money and income, like all of your net worth and things like that are as far as liquid assets. And it's used to feed the poor, to ransom captives, which they doesn't necessarily have that as much today as they used to, relieve debtors of their burdens, help wayfarers, support faithful members of Islam, those kinds of things as well. So they have to do this. 2.5% of their liquid assets and income generating properties. So it's not just how much money did you make, but how much are you gaining from these different resources. All of that you do 2.5% annually. So you have to pay this. That's a very important thing to pay. The Shiite Islam has, which is again, remember, Islam is an umbrella term for a bunch of religions that follow the Prophet Muhammad. Shiites, which is not a majority, Sunni is more of a majority, Shiite's a small one, they pay 20% of all new income for the year. So they're a little bit more strict on theirs. But they have a tithing that they have to pay. The fourth pillar is the fast. This is called Saum, I think is what it is, Saum. This is what you do during the month of Ramadan. If you ever heard Muslims talk about, for Ramadan, they fast for 30 days. And you're thinking, 30 days without food and water? Oh my gosh, how do you survive for 30 days? I didn't think you could go that long without food and water. Now here's the thing. What they do is from dawn to dusk, so it's the rising of the sun and setting of the sun, they don't eat. What they do is they have feasts after the sun goes down. They can do a feast. So they're fasting like 16, 17 hours, and then they can eat if they want to at night and then early in the morning, and then 16, 17 hours to fast. And so it's kind of a different, rather than like a 24-hour fast and then it's done like LDS do. It's you fast, so you start a fast as the sun rises, and you end it when the sun sets, basically. And you do this basically for a month, is what you do during the month of Ramadan. So you abstain from food and drink as well as intercourse for those daylight hours, basically. And then in the evening is when sometimes people will do feasts and have parties and things in the evening to celebrate, and that's when they'll eat, and then they'll go back at it the next day. The fifth pillar is the Hajj, or pilgrimage to Mecca. This is something that all Muslims need to do at least once, if you can. If you cannot afford it, like if it's a huge financial burden to go, then you are exempt from having to do this one. But if you can, you should go at least once, if not every so often, to Mecca and to perform the rites and rituals there. So you actually wear what is it called? The garment of consecration, ihram, 2 pieces of unsewn cloth that cover your body. It's just like this big blanket you wrap around you, and covers all of you, basically your whole body. So if you see images of people at Mecca, they'll be dressed in all white, these big like robes wrapped around them. They are to walk around the Kaaba, the big square piece that has the meteorite in it. They walk around that several times to symbolize. It's the center of the Grand Mosque. It's the worship, the altar for God to do worshiping. And it's kind of like this idea of pilgrimage as you walk around it. That's why you walk several times around it, to symbolize pilgrimage. There is a to stand at Arafat. You go at the plain of southeast of Mecca, and you go there for a little bit of time to hang out, hear a sermon near Mount Arafat, and then you spend some time encamped near Mecca. And there's an animal sacrifice usually you do in Mina. So there's some interesting traditions. It's not just walk around the Kaaba, but there's several other things that you can do also to complete the Hajj, basically. So it can take a few days to do that. Drink water from the well of Zamzam. So they believe that, if you remember in your Old Testament stories, there was when Hagar, the servant of Sarah, Abraham's wife, when Hagar was kicked out, she found herself needing help, and she was guided to a well where she was able to get some water, some sustenance, and an angel came down and taught her and encouraged her to go back. So they believe they know where that well is, the Zamzam well, and so they go get a drink of water out of it. So some interesting things that they do, but those are the major things that they really work on as far as the 5 pillars, like not quite sacraments like the Catholics would have, but in a similar way. These are like 5 major things that you need to do within your Muslim time as a Muslim. Now, when it comes to their faith, they do have a declaration of faith. The LDS has the 13 articles of faith. There's other religions that have a creed that they follow as well. For Islam, there are 6 pillars of faith. 1, to believe in God. 2, to believe in God's angels. The 3rd, to believe in God's revealed books, which is the Quran, the New Testament, the Evangel, which is the New Testament, the Psalms of David, which is part of the Old Testament, the Torah, which is Jewish scripture, and the pages of Abraham. So it's not just Quran, but there's all these other ones that they believe in as well, and they take them as God's scripture. Pillar number 4 is to believe in Allah's messengers, which include many of the prophets of the Hebrew Bible, like Jesus, John the Baptist, as well as Hud and Salih, some other Arab prophets, and Muhammad. You need to believe in these people and the messages that they brought. The 5th pillar is to believe in the last day. So this is kind of getting into the day of judgment, the end of times, millennialism type ideas, that they do have a concept of that, to be prepared to meet your maker type ideas. And then the 6th is to believe in Allah's determination of affairs, whether good or bad. So understanding that Allah has a role to play, God has a role to play in everything that happens in your life. And you need to be respectful and aware of Him helping you and guiding you in your life. So that's a couple interesting things we've talked about this week. There were some interesting ideas around some great battles, because Muhammad was not a very liked guy when he first came out. So if you realize, Islam came out in the 600s AD. So Christians and Jews and lots of other groups have already been well established in the area. So like Zoroastrians and others coming from Iran area. So even the Arabs didn't necessarily like him a lot, because he changed things. The Arabs wanted to fight for power. Might was right. If you had more army guys and you could conquer the next tribe, you won. It was your perspective that won the day. So that's kind of how it was. It was a little lawless in the Saudi Arabian Peninsula back then. They didn't have a centralized government, basically. So Islam basically started to create a more centralized way for Arabs to govern. But that meant getting rid of these warlords. That meant getting rid of these stretches for power that these people would go on to more fame and fortune, but learn to give it, learn to create a society where everybody can live. So Muhammad was born to the Quraysh tribe, and this tribe controlled Mecca. The problem is not all the Quraysh liked him, because he was trying to tell them, you need to give up power. You need to empower people to have a voice themselves, allow them to have a say in elections and those kinds of ideas, have more equality for men and women, and give more money to the poor, those things. And they're like, no, we don't like this guy. He's bad for business. The challenge is Muhammad's uncle, who raised him, was of course part of this Quraysh tribe, and he was a wealthy sheik. So they couldn't mess with Muhammad, because they would suffer the wrath of his uncle, who gave him protection. Well, after his uncle died, he didn't have his protection. So he got kicked out of Mecca and that area from the Quraysh tribe. So he and his followers left. There was a big battle. They actually were like 10-1 odds against them, and the Muslims the people of Islam actually beat the other tribes back. And then the Muslims got a little heady, got excited about, oh yeah, God's on our side. And so they started attacking, and then they lost, and it didn't work out so well. So they ended up going to the city of Medina, which is north of Mecca. They settled in that city with the other groups that were already there, and there was a Jewish community and others that were there, other Arabs and things. So they kind of came in and kind of took over the city. And they were attacked from the Quraysh at Mecca, defended themselves, and then the Muslims came down from Medina to attack at Mecca. Eventually, it kind of went back and forth a little bit, but eventually the Muslims won. The Islamic tribes won out over the non-Islamic tribes, and they were able to control Mecca. So that's how they got Mecca. It was around 630 AD was when that happened. And so Islam finally took over Mecca, cleared out all the polytheistic idols and all the other rituals and stuff, cleaned the area up, made it monotheistic. And that's when the Hajj and those ideas started to come about, was after that. So the Islamic tribes have controlled Mecca ever since 630 AD. They've had it that long, and they've controlled that. And that's when they started to form kind of a theocracy, if you will, which is a religious government in Mecca. And then all the other tribal groups that started to join Islam were able to join into this group and to grow. And then Islam eventually became a very strong power in the area and started to grow and interact with like Romans and up into Byzantium areas and things. That's where the Ottoman Empire was Islamic. A lot of things going on as they ran into Christians and all these other groups that were in the northern end of the Middle East area, where we would call like Turkey today, kind of the Balkan areas. So that's how they grew. So we're going to get into more about their beliefs and ideas next week. But I thought that'd be just kind of a really good, quick summary of what we've learned. Let's jump over to my mediation class really quick. In that class, we spent this week talking about the importance of asking good questions. So there's a pre-mediation that you go through when you're meeting with people. And the whole point of that is to understand that person's perspective. Where did they come from? What was their point of view on this, whatever the problem is that's happening? Why do they feel the way they do? What's going on in their mind? And so we want to help them feel comfortable, help them feel safe talking with you. And then ask good questions to understand them. So the goal is to understand them, not agree with them. Because you have to realize that there's a whole nother perspective that you have to understand as well. So as a mediator, your job is to hold conflicting ideas in your mind about this conflict. And realize that when you get involved, your perceptions and your ideas start to coalesce with the other people in it. And you become a part of the conflict, not in a bad way, but in a transformational way, in a way to encourage good things to happen. But your perceptions, your ideas, what you bring to the table will influence the outcome of the mediation. So you want to be careful and mindful of, do I have a bias that would cause me to favor one side over the other? I need to, can I set that aside while I'm working with them? Do I have a similar challenge in my own life that's going to bias my opinions here? So you want to be careful of yourself so that you can help these people with their situation. Another part of that too is realizing that sometimes this conflict might be something that you don't believe in. And so that's something you have to think about. If this is a different religion and you're negotiating with two people and you're a different religion than they are, and this is a religious discussion, you may disagree with their premise or not believe in their premise at the beginning, but that's not your point as a mediator. Your point as a mediator is to enter their world and understand what is right in their world and how can we make this work, would be agreeable for them. And so this is where good questions a good question, learning to ask good questions makes a big difference. So ask good questions to understand where they're coming from, what are their values, what is important to them, what do they like and dislike about the situation or the other person, things. Start to understand them and help move them in a direction to see the humanity of the other person. They have to be willing to admit that the other person has some good points in the argument, and our job isn't to prove one versus the other. Our job is to find a resolution between the two of you. When usually they both come together and see the humanity of the other side, a lot gets resolved on its own. People are basically honest, and they'll have that integrity and move forward, admitting, yes, that's where you are right and I was wrong. Here's where I was right and you are wrong. Let's work this out. Let's make sure, we don't have to be together, but we have to understand that you are human, you are good and imperfect. I'm good and imperfect. I'm a human, and then get that worked out, basically. So it was a fun time. We did some pre-mediation interviews in the class. There was a scenario that the teacher set up for us. So it was fun to just start applying it and doing more with it as we went. Now for my research class, boy, has that been an interesting one. We actually didn't have class this week because my professor was sick, but that just meant more time to study. And let me give you some ideas on studying. I've got bibliography I'm keeping of the books, a list of all the books and documents that I am looking at. So let me give you some examples here. This is one of the books I've been looking at, Out of Obscurity. This is talking about ideas in Mormonism since 1945. So because I think my research is going to stay focused more on the 20th century, how did laws and legal the atmosphere in America adjust and affect how church members worshiped in the LDS faith? So usually when we think about like worshiping, we think of getting revelations from God to our prophets, and then they tell us, here's how you set up your worship, here's how you do things, here's how it's all done. But what's been interesting is I'm looking at these books, realizing that the legal atmosphere makes a huge impact in how we worship. I mean, the obvious example is polygamy. That worship practice had to be given up because of the laws. But even looking at other countries, there were challenges in other countries that were happening when the church went international. So it wasn't just inside America. When they went international, they started to move the similar Mormon ideas from America into these other countries, and they found out it doesn't quite work. So they had to start refining and changing what they do in these other countries to clarify their message. Now the challenge is when you think of worship, you think of it should be the same everywhere. If it's the same church, it should be the same everywhere. So what we've been seeing in the last 20 years in the LDS church, 20 to 30 years, is international cultures and trends and laws and ideas are shaping how the church does things. And that is now starting to be influencing how members worship in America, and that connection and relationship. So that's a really interesting idea, that our worship is strongly influenced by the laws of the countries that we are in. And so that's one book. Here's another one that I'm reading. I'm hopefully going to start this weekend to get into this one. Mormonism in Transition. I talk a lot about changes and issues that happened in the church during the 20th century. They didn't have a cover on this one, but this is let's see, let me put that up there. Oh, it's upside down, sorry. The Oxford book on Mormonism, basically the Handbook of Mormonism. So I got a few articles to read out of that one. This is another book called The Spirit of the Law. It's all about legal challenges, lawsuits, and things the church was involved in, and other churches as well, how the law has shaped worship in other religions. And then this one here is Zion in the Courts. So this one's more about the LDS church being sued in different parts of the country for different things through the 19th and 20th centuries. So, and that's just a few of them. I'm looking at, I've got a book on polygamy, the Mormon question, that I've been reading to go into, looking up tons of research for lawsuits and court cases and things against the church that influence how we worship. So how a church worships does have a strong influence on what's the legal environment of the country that you're in. So worship doesn't necessarily happen in a vacuum, meaning you just can't worship the way you want and nothing touches it and nothing affects it. The laws of the land that you're in does impact it. And that's what I'm studying and diving into. So a lot of reading, a lot of studying to do. When you do research, you have a question you're trying to answer. And so what you want to do is look for secondary sources. So these are people that have written about law and religion as well. So these are secondary sources. They're talking about those topics. So you read your secondary sources to gather information, and that helps to drive you and find more primary sources. Primary sources are documents that talk about what actually happened. So a court case. What was the transcript of a court case is a primary source. If we're thinking of 19th century primary sources for how laws have changed LDS worship, the extermination order from Governor Boggs of Missouri would be a primary source. We would read that, we would understand it, and talk about why that affected how church members worshiped. Mostly that one, they had to escape. They had to flee for their lives and get out of Missouri before the mobs would come through and kill them. So literally they had to pick up and go and get out of there. So there's a lot of different things like that that are out there. So you want to find primary sources are the documents that were created from the events, like court cases or letters or journal entries from people or things like that. Secondary sources are the other scholars writing about those topics. And so my goal is to read these books, to understand these authors here and say, okay, here's how they're approaching this. What is my approach that's going to be different? How can I contribute to the conversation around laws and the LDS Church? So that's what I want to look at, is what can I do to take what they've said and find a new angle to look at that maybe they haven't approached, and do the research to go that direction and say, I want to contribute to this conversation, and have a paper that even they could come back on and go, oh, that's an interesting perspective. I didn't think about it that way, but that's really cool. That adds to this conversation about law and religion. So that's, in essence, how you go about writing these papers, these research papers. So they're really fun, actually. They're a lot of work. Lots of reading, lots of thinking through things, lots of getting into like critical analysis of, well, why is this law here? What happened with that law? What was the effect of that? What does that mean, or what are the implications of that? So you want to write all this down, keep good notes of what you're studying and doing. So if you want to do a research paper, here's how you do it, okay? Pick a topic and start digging into that. Where are the secondary sources? Who has written about that topic? Find a bunch of these secondary sources. Get all those books, whether you go to the library and check them out or buy them yourself is up to you. Look on websites like JSTOR for articles and things, which is really good. Gather information, read it, understand it, and then think about where can I contribute to this conversation? And that's what you start writing about. And so you use primary sources and secondary sources to demonstrate. The secondary sources tell everybody that reads your article, you know what you're talking about. You've evaluated what else is out there, and here's where you're coming in different than them. Here's where you agree or disagree with them too, is another way to look at that. Then you interact with your primary sources to say, here's what I found, here's what was said, here's how we can interpret that and think about this. And then you put all that together, and that's your paper, and you write it all out. So it's not super hard to do, but it's actually quite fun. It is a lot of work. But you can get into its topics, and you'll find tons of little rabbit holes to fly off on. So you have to be focused on, okay, here's my topic. Maybe I'll come back and look at those articles or those information later, to stay focused. And then you have to, sometimes as you go through this research, your question starts to shift, because you start to realize, oh, what I originally thought of maybe isn't quite the right angle or direction to go. And so I've got to kind of navigate and tweak and modify where I'm going to make this work. What is the argument I'm trying to do, and what is going to support that argument? So it's doing the research that'll start to shift that around, and then you can start writing and pulling the sources together in a paper to write. After that, it's just the technical part of writing and grammar and sentence structures, and make sure your footnotes are done properly. We're using the Chicago manual style. So get Turabian's book on Chicago manual style and things like that if you want to get more into it, more official. But it doesn't mean you can't write a paper. It might not be well written, but you can write a paper, and then you could get scholars to even actually help you, like at libraries or other universities. Get people who have degrees, who the professors and things. They'll be more than happy to help you in polishing the paper and challenging the paper to help make it better. So it's quite a lot of work, going back and forth and struggling with challenges and issues and things that you read and find. But man, is it cool when you write that paper. It is so awesome when you do that and you get feedback from people and they question it and you're like, oh, I got to go back and redo that. So feedback is a good thing. They're not trying to destroy your paper or ruin it. They're trying to help you make it better by questioning and challenging what you're talking about. Take that feedback in. You'll make a better paper. Keep rewriting it. And you'll rewrite the paper like 20, 30 times. And then you can release it and put it up somewhere where you can see it, and others can read it and provide feedback on it, things as well. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but it can be really rewarding to do that. So there's a quick synopsis of how to write a research paper. We'll talk more as we get into the rest of this semester. But thanks for watching. Hope you guys are enjoying all these videos. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Share them out onto your social sites if you want to encourage more people to follow as well. If you feel like donating, there's links on all the videos to donate if you'd like to. Buying all these books is not cheap. Thankfully, I was able to get a lot of these at the library at the university. But some of them I've bought because they're really good books I want to keep for reference. But yeah, thanks you very much, and we'll see you next week.